Well, we'll go ahead and get started. I think with this one, if questions come up while I'm reading it, go ahead and ask them. You don't have to wait till we're done because it goes around on a lot of topics and you'll forget your question as we move from one topic to another. So as we talked about last time, after the Buddha died, the Sangha was on its own, and they organized themselves into different groups. And what kept them as a unified Sangha, a particular kind of order of monks, was their sticking to various rules. And of course, there were things like, as we talked about last time, a certain kind of lifestyle that basically you didn't own anything except a begging bowl and your robes, and you sat under trees and you went out begging every day for your food. And that was pretty much the simple life that the monk is leading. And so they could be by themselves, they could be with a group, but where there were groups, they would get together twice a month and recite their code of discipline. So this is the kind of the code that keeps the order together. So, and it's very important because you have all these, but I'm thinking about this, you have all these Buddhist monks wandering around northern India. And one of the big problems in religion is that men and at the time we're talking about men of the cloth have often acted badly. And so it casts, if you have a Buddhist monk and they're going out and they're seducing young girls or something, or running various financial scams, then the order is going to quickly fall into, disrespect. You're going to even stop giving food to the monks, so the other monks are going to starve because of your bad behavior. So they, if you're going to have any kind of an order at all, you have to have a zero tolerance discipline, because you can't have people going out there and besmirching the good name of the Buddhist order and undoing all the good work that other people are doing. And of course, this is a general problem with priests or ministers or anything. So it's always how do you enforce some sort of discipline so that people that aren't suited for this kind of life are weeded out quickly. So that's what the Praktimoska is. And basically they get together, they're going to recite the rules of the order, and it's an opportunity for anybody who's violated them to confess. And then basically if you confess, that's pretty much the end of it. In some of them there's a little bit of penance, but not much. And obviously you can't be fined because you're not handling money. So they can't make you sit under more trees than the tree you're already sitting under. So, but it is this thing where you're completely open about your life. And that's something that actually translates to how we might live, in the sense that morally we're completely open. We're not nursing hidden sins, as the Victorians like to say. That everything is out in the open. Of course, we make mistakes, but we confess those and move on. Now, of course, in our practice, the Tibetan Vajrayana practice, we have deities so that, for example, we have a confession practice that's built around Vajrasattva, and Vajrasattva is a deity of purity. And his simple mantra is simply Om Vajrasattva Hum, and then there's a longer mantra that is also done. And there's a long purification practice. There's one can go into purification practices for years or months, but there's also just confessing, and it involves this idea of confession of sin. And being forgiven. And the Praktimovka is quite a bit like Vajrasattva practice, except they're doing it as a group, and they're saying, does anybody have this kind of sin? And they confess it and such, and move on. And so it's very the whole idea here is, again, transparency, that you're not holding on to these things, that when you make mistakes, you realize that you made a mistake, and you confess it, or you say Om Vajrasattva Hum, which is the same thing in our tradition. So, that said, this is the Praktimovka Sutra of the Mula Savasthavadins. And there's also one in this book, too, which we're not going to read, in the Pravish book of the Mahasamgikas. That was a different sect. So this is kind of later into it. This is not the earliest version of the confession. The earliest version of the confession is probably much shorter. But these ones are longer. They have about 250 rules, and this is probably well into a few hundred years after the Buddha, when they've got now different schools of Buddhism, and they've developed their own somewhat different Vinayas, although basically they hold to the same kind of rules. Interestingly enough, as I was reading about the Vinaya today, in China and Japan, or particularly in Japan, they shortened it. When in the Tendai school, one of the great teachers decided that was too many rules, and he cut it back to 60. So in the Japanese Buddhism, like Zen, they only hold to 60 rules instead of the 250. So this is the Mula Sarvasavastins, and it has a opening verse that we'll read. Having bowed down before the chief one of the world, who crossed over the boundless attachment to suffering, who was a flag of glory celebrated in the three worlds, whose lion's roar made apparent the roar of the true Dharma, who reached the jeweled treasure of omniscience, whose feet were rubbed by the crest jewels of Brahma's egg, whatever that means. I will explain the treasury of jewels, which is the moral precepts relating to omniscience, in the middle of the community of monks. This Praktimoksa is called the essence, the heart, and foundation of the limitless and unfathomable water of the ocean of Vinaya of the Buddha. This is the compendium of the true Dharma written by the king of the true Dharma. This great treatise consists of articles of precepts for the monks who are like a guild of merchants. This is the medicine for impeding the venom of those corrupted by bad discipline. This is the This is the prod for youth, bewildered by their youthfulness. This is the raft for crossing over the deep ocean of samsara. This is the foremost guide for a king. This stands like a ladder for ascending the city of relief. It is proclaimed, when I enter nirvana, this will be your teacher. So here the Buddha is saying that having entered nirvana, he leaves for the monks this code of discipline, and that is their ladder to liberation, their raft for crossing samsara, and my favorite, the prod for youth bewildered by their youthfulness. Sounds like would be a good description of many about all youth. And listen for building bad discipline. So this is very venerated, the discipline here. And better yet, as the next verse says, the hearing of this, praktimoska, this rule of discipline, is hard to obtain in 10 millions of ages, even going beyond to grasp and bear it, to much more difficult to obtain. Happy is the birth of Buddhas, happy is the knowledge of the Dharma, happy is the harmony of the Sangha, happy is the tapas of the shramanas. That's an unusual one in there. Tapas are magical powers, or inner heat, and they're generated by yogis, which are shramanas. So like it's the powers of in Tibet we might say the powers of the tantric yogis. Okay, so next goes, happy is the sight of the noble ones. Happy also is association with the truth. Absence of ignorance should be constant happiness. Happy is seeing disciplined ones. Happy is seeing learned ones. And seeing the realized ones, the arhats, happy. This is good for removal of all rebirth. Happy is the river. Happy the bank of the river. Happy is the person who has acquired the Dharma. So I'm very enthused here about the benefits of keeping good discipline. It is a source of all kinds of happiness, and it even makes the river of samsara happy, which is pretty amazing. And that is the happiness of the disciplined person. So this it's also called this pasada. This pasada has this monthly recital. The pasada has purpose for those who are modest, who follow the discipline of good conduct, who are disposed to proper livelihood, and are resolved towards pure discipline. What is the use of pasada to those whose actions are of wicked discipline? Oh, I'm sorry, I'm reading the wrong. I skipped to the wrong page here. All right, happy is the river, happy is the bank of the river, happy is the person who's acquired the Dharma, happy is the attainment of prajna, happy indeed is the destruction of ego. So that nails it right there. Happy is the condition of those learned ones who have made fixed intentions and subdued their senses. Happy is the condition of those gone to old age in peaceful forests, and those who have spent their youth in forests. I like the way trees keep getting brought into this. So yes, that's what I meant. An old age in a peaceful forest. So that is the preface, celebrating the happy state of disciplined yogis. And now we'll go on to do you have any questions?
This is just the introduction.
Well, they call that the preface.
The preface, okay. Are you planning on reading the full 250 vows?
We'll start into it. If we get bored, we'll do something else.
Okay. Did you send us a copy of these, or you just?
I can't really without Xeroxing the whole book. It's not.
Okay.
It's not like
yeah, don't bother. No, it's okay. I just want to make sure I wasn't missing anything. That's all.
Well, for nuns, it's an additional 80, but I don't think they're in this translation. Okay, so now we're to the and I'll read just a little bit of this, and then we'll sort of get right into it. The leader. Oh, so now the leader of this monthly ceremony is going to address the monks. Oh, venerable ones, so many hot seasons have passed, so many remain. Life passes, old age and death approach. The teaching of the teacher are diminishing. Yoga should be practiced by the venerable ones with diligence. O venerable ones, let the Sangha listen. Today is the 14th day of the lunar month, Posada Day for the Sangha. If it seems good and the Sangha should agree that this is the right time, let us perform Posada and recite the Praktimoska Sutra together. And the monks respond, "O Venerable One, we will make the Posada and recite the Praktimoska." And the leader begins. For whom there may be a fault, it should be confessed by that one. If there is no fault, one should be silent. By being silent, we will understand that the venerable ones here are completely pure. Just as there is an explanation for a monk questioned individually in this or that form, so also there is a threefold public proclamation in the assembly of monks. For every monk being questioned in this way 3 times in the assembly, who does not reveal an existing fault which is remembered, that is speaking a deliberate lie. Speaking a deliberate lie, not confessing your fault, O venerable ones, has been declared by the Blessed One, the Buddha, to be an obstructive condition. Therefore, an existing fault should be revealed by a fallen monk. Remember the offense and hoping for purity. By revealing it, there is comfort for him, but by not revealing it, there is none. O venerable ones, the introduction of the Praktimoksha Sutra recitation has been recited by me. Therefore, I ask the venerable ones, are you completely pure in this arena? A second and also a third time I ask, are you completely pure in this matter? Since there is silence, the venerable ones must be completely pure in this matter. I will take it as such. Now we're going to get down to specific offenses. And so the monks get a chance to think of details that they may have forgotten in general. So we're going to do the first of these are going to be what they call 4 parajika dharmas. And the parajika is the 4 most severe things that you can do to break discipline. In fact, they're so severe that it's 1 strike and you're out forever. If you can have one of these or confess one of these or people find out about one of these, you're excommunicated. You're no longer a monk, and that's it. So these were the rest of them are not like that. The rest of them you get chances to kind of mend your ways. But these immediately are signs that you're not suitable for the monastic life, shall we say. Now, O venerable ones, the 4 parajika dharmas come up. Number 1, whatever monk having undertaken the proper course and training of monks should, not having rejected the training and not having revealed any weakness in the training, should not indulge in sexual intercourse, an unchaste thing for a monk, even so much as with an animal, and if that has happened, this monk is parajika, expelled. Number 2, whatever monk, having gone to a village or forest, should take from others what is not given in a manner considered to be theft, and by such form of theft, a king or king's minister, having seized him, would say, slay, bind, or banish him, saying, "Oh, monk, you are a thief, you are a fool, you are a robber." Should that monk take in this way what is not given, the monk is parajika, expelled. Number 3, whatever monk should intentionally, with his own hand, deprive a human or one that has human form of life. I like that. A little clarification there. Lots walking around who aren't really human, but you shouldn't take their lives anyway. Deprive a human or one that has human form of life, supply him with a knife, search for an assassin for him, instigate him to death, or praise the nature of death, saying, "Oh man, what use is this dreadful, impure, sinful life to you?" "Oh man, oh monk, oh man, death is better than life for you." Should the monk purposefully, being of our one opinion, instigate him in many ways to death and recommend the nature of death to him, then that monk, and that man die by that means, this monk is paradika expelled. So here, interestingly enough, if you kill a human, if you kill somebody, you're out. And if you encourage somebody to kill themselves, you're out. The last one is kind of interesting. It's found sort of like social media. It's a big thing on social media that, well, not a big thing, fortunately, but it does happen where people get into relationships where they encourage strangers to kill themselves. And that would get you tossed from the song at that point. So number 4, whenever a monk, a knowing understanding, should boast of having superhuman faculties, sufficient knowledge and the specific spiritual realization of the realized ones, and insight and state of peace, which are inexistent and unobtained by him, saying, "I know, I see this," and then a later time the monk says, "Well, no, I really didn't see that. I was just lying. It was worthless, vain, false speaking." That monk is parajika expelled. O venerable ones, the 4 parajika dharmas have been recited by me. Whatever monk, having committed one or another fault, is not to obtain dwelling or eating together with the monks. As before, so after, he is expelled. Therefore I ask the venerable ones, are you completely pure in this matter? Second, also a third time I ask the venerable ones, are you completely pure in this matter? Then there is silence. The venerable ones must be completely pure in this matter. That's what I understand. So what do you think for parajika dharmas?
So it's stealing, killing, having sex, or what was the 4th one?
Claim, that's an interesting one. Claiming
claiming powers. Okay.
And that's an interesting one because compared to the other 3, doesn't seem to be quite as serious an offense. But you have to think of it as you have this community, this disciplined community living together and representing this particular mode of spiritual training. And you just can't have somebody when you're tending to be what they're not. That really, and then getting, getting uncovered on that one. That just really would, again, messes the whole project up. As well, of course, as not being able to discipline yourself in major ways, like not killing, stealing, or having intercourse since you're taking a vow of celibacy.
So the role of these then are, at least in part, to protect the whole order, and you kind of made that point a few times. But they're also inherently moral or immoral. Like it's immoral for its own sake, and it's also for the sake of the Sangha.
Well, they're obviously immoral.
Mm-hmm.
Well, except in the case of sex. If you're not a monk, if you're a householder, then it's different kind of rules. I mean, then it's a question of who's suitable and who's not. And basically, of course, your wife or your husband are suitable, and pretty much everyone else is not. But it's slightly different than for the monk who's living by himself and who is celibate. So that's just the intercourse one by itself is just again, some of these that's not even particularly unethical if it's consensual, but it shows you're not suitable for the monastic life or to be a representative of the sangha or to wear the robe. It's sort of like being a Marine. Of course, that is, they have standards. So to wear the robe, you have to hold up these standards. And because people expect that, it's when they see somebody wearing the robe, they expect that this is a somewhat saintly person who's keeping to a code of discipline. And that's true of any of the orders. I imagine in India today, you can't, if you're a Shiva devotee and you've got the garb and the look of a Shiva devotee, and I imagine they have to keep to a really strict code, because if they're messing around and people, found out about it, that would be very damaging to that group. Just in the same way that Catholic priests and ministers who get caught, which they do a great, significant numbers, are ruin the whole image of priests. But in that case, I think it's lack of applied. I mean, the Catholic Church, I think they did a survey in Australia, and 10% of the priests admitted to molesting people or something like that. But that's a total breakdown in discipline. You get numbers up in that range. The idea with these ceremonies is to get people who aren't suited out and keep the community pure. Okay, well, we'll see what time. Oh, we got plenty of time. Okay, so the next set, they're called Samgya Vasasa Dharmas, or something like that. There's 13 of them, and no one knows what that word actually means. You can use it again. But there's 13. The next set are the 13. Next set of 13 rules, and these are serious, but they're not going to get you expelled. What will happen is that if you interesting enough, it'll get down later that as long as you've not confessed it, you're on probation for that period of time. So if you did something and you waited a month to confess it, then you're on probation for a month. And then there's certain penances involved in that. But if you confess it right away, then apparently and stop, then you go on. So these are the next 13 rules. Now, O venerable ones, the 13 Samgya Vasesa Dharmas come up in the half-monthly Praktimoska Sutra recitation. And these are: 1, intentional emission of semen except during a dream. 2, whatever monk with perverted mind should come into bodily contact with a woman, taking her hand, taking your arm, taking your hair, touching one another of her limbs, or should indulge in stroking her limbs, that is a fault. So Joe Biden probably couldn't be part of the Sangha. Number 3, whatever monk, even perverted mind, should speak to a woman with wicked, evil, or vulgar words connected with sexual intercourse, just as a young man speaks to a young woman, that is a fault. I think it kind of slams the young men here a little bit. But. Number 4, whatever monk with perverted mind should recommend in front of a woman sexual service with her body to himself, saying, "Sister, this is the highest of services, namely that one should serve with this act connected with intercourse a monk like me, who is well disciplined, virtuous, and chaste." That is Paul. What is interesting when you read through these is there's a reason for every one of these rules. And actually, there's a story, a backstory to every one of these rules.
Yeah.
Originally, it said that we started with very few of them, but then these monks would, do these things, and so then there would be a new rule. And number 5, whatever a monk should undertake to act as a go-between, bringing a man to a woman or a woman to a man, so much as for a wife, a lover, or even for a moment, that's a fault. Number 6, when a monk begging himself, by begging, is getting a hut built, having no donor intended for himself, the hut should be built according to measure. So this next one's going to be about, apparently you could beg, and if somebody says, given the rainy season, let me build you a hut, you can do that, but there's a kind of a rule that you have to follow. So this kind of, again, gives us a little insight to how they were living in these very early times. So first of all, you have to have your hut can only be a certain size. This is the measure for the hut in length, 12 spans of the sugata to span, and width, 7 spans inside. So whatever a sugata span is. So you get a small hut, presumably, I suspect. And then the second one is monks should be brought by that monk for viewing the site, and that site should be viewed by those monks who are brought and ascertain that it doesn't involve slaughter and is good for roaming about. And if you don't follow those rules, that's a fault. So there's rules on how you acquire a hut. The next one is when you're having a vihara built. A vihara is bigger than a hut. A vihara is like a meditation hall or a space in which maybe a number of monks might live. And again, you have to go about it the right way. You have to have people look at the site. You have to be involved. There's no ritual slaughter. Apparently something common in Indian real estate transactions. So that can't be going on. And it has to be a good place where people can, peaceful, and they can walk around and alone and find trees and such. So if you don't do that when you're building a larger structure, that's a fault. And then number 8 is interesting. Whatever monk, ill-tempered, corrupt, and angry because of malice toward a monk, should accuse a pure, faultless monk of a groundless parajika thinking, thus indeed I'll cause this monk to fall out of the pure life, or get him tossed out of the Sangha, actually. And in later time, the corrupt monk is being questioned, and it turns out that he was lying. That's a fault. Now, you'd think that one would get you tossed out of the Sangha right away, but they're very generous here. So if you slander somebody and say that they did something that should get them expelled and you're lying, that's a fault. Although I think it'd be a pretty serious one. Number 9, whatever monk ill-tempered, corrupt, and angry because of malice toward another monk should accuse him of another kind of offense and cause problems and turn out to be lying, that's a fault. Number 10, whatever monk should proceed toward dividing the Sangha, which is harmonious, or causing a schism in any kind of way, and even when he's told not to go ahead and do this by the monks, do not, O Venerable One, proceed toward dividing the Sangha, which is harmonious, or arguing points that cause schisms. Let it go and come together, for the Sangha should be harmonious, united on friendly terms without dispute, dwelling comfortably under one rule, like milk and water, illuminating the teaching of the teacher. And should that monk, being spoken to in such a way, abandon that course of trying to cause schisms and division, that's good. In other words, let it go. If he should not abandon it, then you get 3 chances, and that's it. Then it becomes default. If you continually do things that cause disharmony in the Sangha. So disharmony in the Sangha and causing schism is fairly serious. In some versions that I read of the Praktimoksha, instead that's almost one that gets you expelled. I think causing schism, I thought that was one of the ones that got you expelled, but in this particular version, it's not. If the there are 1, 2, 3, or many monks, comrades of a monk who is the speaker of disunion, should these monks say to those other monks, do not, O Venerable One, say anything good or bad about this monk. Why? This monk, O Venerable One, speaks according to the Dharma and according to the Vinaya, and taking up our wish and our objective obtains them. This monk speaks knowingly and not unknowingly, and that which pleases this monk also pleases and seems good to us. These monks, siding with the schism maker, should be spoken of by the monks. Don't go this way. That monk is not speaking according to the Dharma and according to the Vinaya. He's not following the right objectives. He's not speaking knowingly, and so forth and so on. And old monks, do not delight in joining this person in creating a schism. And so basically, if somebody's trying to cause a schism and you're siding with them and causing disharmony, and you get reprimanded for that and you keep doing it, then that's going to be a fault too. And then number 12, if many monks who are corrupters of families and practitioners of evil should, I love that, corrupters of families and practitioners of evil. I mean, you shouldn't be a monk if you're a corrupter of family and practitioner of evil, but at any rate, if many monks who are corrupters of families and practitioners of evil should dwell near a certain village or town, the families corrupted by these monks should be seen, heard, or known of. These monks should be spoken to by other monks, saying, Venerable monks, you're corrupting the families of practitioner of evil, and corrupting has been seen and heard. Depart once from this place. You have lived here long enough. And if the monks don't leave and lie about the fact that they haven't done these things, then that's a fault. Just shorten it a bit here. So, basically, you can see these different rules in the Sangha where situations come up, and people, there are ones where you're just not doing it the right way. You're not creating the right image, and people reprimand you. They're trying to help you, and you get a few chances to get it right. And if you don't get it right, then I think they're pretty much going to expel you. And that would be true of any of these type of ones where you're getting a few chances. You don't get expelled right away, but I think you're going to get expelled if you continue to cause problems of that kind, causing schism or mixing it up with lay people or locals and such.
So is giving room for, or a little a way for people to be forgiven or be to confess and make amends in the schism incidences? Isn't that makes
Yeah, if people drop it and stop doing it, then they can be forgiven. As long as they don't continually do it.
yeah.
Again, they get the 3 chances, and that's why they have to confess these faults if they're not living up to this standard. And the 13th one, which I didn't get to, basically is just being generally disagreeable and being reprimanded for it, and not, not doing anything about that. After 3 times, that one becomes a fault, a serious fault as well. So just then, to conclude this section, O Venerable Ones, the 13 dharmas of this type have been recited by me, 9 of which become false at once, and 4 which become false after the 3rd warning. If a monk has fallen into one or another of these faults, so much time is spent concealing it, that monk then must go through the probation and various ceremonies called a manatva, until he can then be admitted back and reinstated. So you kind of get suspended is what happens, and then if you turn around, you get reinstated, or you don't get reinstated. So then, having read all that, he asked, therefore I ask, are you completely pure in all these 13 items? A second and a third time I ask you, are you completely pure on this matter? Since there is silence, the Venerable Ones must be completely pure in this matter. Thus do I understand.
So they don't even have to answer. They're just silent.
Right. If they're leading a pure life, then they sit there in noble silence. And you get kind of cool. I mean, respect for the monks. The monks are these people. Now, these are people now who have been admitted to the order. So they've been trained, they've been instructed, they've gone through some kind of training. They've agreed to become monks. This is something when you have your full ordination. And so at this point, a monk is a venerated person. Lay people get merit when they give him food. That's why people are building huts for them. They're become an object of kind of local veneration. So the whole thing, if you're going to be an object of local veneration, which is something that's very helpful to the common people, to the lay people, and it gives them a chance to get merit and such, you have to be a worthy object of merit. So this is a very old idea. The renunciate is a special kind of person who's leading a particularly pure life, a particularly disciplined life, which is actually what purity is in India. And your discipline makes you worthy of people giving you food and clothing, whatever, and your minimal things that you need, and listening to your teachings as well, because these monks are going out, they're giving teachings, they're giving instructions, they're talking to people, they're counseling people. They've been sent out by the Buddha to kind of, in the same way you get disciples sent out in the New Testament, go and spread around the world and proclaim the Dharma. And that's what they're in fact doing. So that's a position of some status. So that's reinforced by these ceremonies where they're sitting together in silence as they hear all the things, the discipline, and since if they're ones who are keeping it, then it just sort of binds the group together. And you would think that if you're an order of monks and you've gone through this a few months, you're doing it twice a month. I mean, pretty soon it's going to be rare for anybody to be confessing. It's kind of it's not, if you had could you imagine if you'd gotten all the, not to brag terribly on priests, but they're such a nice example here. If you got all the priests together twice a month and say, have you not molested anyone? Have you not done this? Have you not, done that? I mean, after a number of times of that kind of thing in a big group setting, where people know you and know what you're up to, it would definitely, be a very strong aid to maintaining good discipline.
When and does it ever come on? Like, when does confession as a kind of therapeutic tool, is that ever become part of the equation in the Praktimoksha, or is that's just more of a Catholic or more of a Western psychological idea?
Well, I think it's understood that is a benefit to you personally and psychologically. In the very first part of it in the preface, I read, it says here, an existing fault should be revealed by a fallen monk, remembering the offense and hoping for purity. By revealing it, there is comfort for him, and by not revealing it, there is none. So that's the psychological, that you, but you can see how the standard of behavior just gets reinforced. First of all, you've been trained in this, and then you're keeping to it, and at the same time, it creates a remarkable simple life because, as I said, you go through a year of this, 6 months of this, you're really not going to want to be confessing anything. I mean, and you're just naturally it's going to you're just going to give it up and lead the right life. So I think that and once you do that for the Buddha, you've really created all this kind of merit and happiness. And that's why in the preface we had that long poem or hymn to happiness, the happiness of the monk who keeps the discipline. And it just creates tremendous simplicity in life. And it's an opportunity that's really only available in the monastic setting, because a householder can't attain that kind of simplicity of virtue. A householder has fewer rules. The householder is in a different kind of situation where you're trying to balance a lot of competing demands and interests and dealing with a lot of worldly issues and concerns. And you can't, a worldly life does not lend itself to that kind, to this kind of holding this kind of discipline. Although in a certain case, particularly for Mahayana practitioners, you always have an altruistic mind. If you're always feel loving towards other people and never feel, malicious towards other people, then you pretty much have a natural discipline going there. I think that our discipline is more a discipline of love than a discipline of rule. Although it's nice the rules, in a sense, there's kind of they're tied to altruistic action. Obviously, going around seducing people is not altruistic, nor stealing from them or killing them or longing for them or scamming them or, any of this kind of stuff.
Can you say more about the discipline of love?
Well, the discipline of compassion, the bodhisattva ideal that we put others before us, that we're looking for the good of the whole, hoping, wishing others well, trying to be helpful to others within reason, and so forth. That purifies your ethics right there, because ethics really, in my mind, I mean, we can discuss it if people have different ideas, but to my mind, it's about being helpful to other people, and not, first of all, it's not harming other people, but it's actually, actively in some way, naturally providing benefit to other people. So that if you're not hurting other people, then you're not really creating any kind of ethical problem for yourself. You shouldn't be lying awake at night thinking, I should have helped this person. It made me feel good. I mean, that just doesn't happen. You sleep soundly when you've done good deeds. But if you're not doing good deeds, then you do tend to wake up in the middle of the night, man, that was a mess, that sort of thing.
So like the Hinayana then is just, I mean, it kind of goes to Hinayana Mahayana development, where Hinayana is just trying to calm the whole inner psychological turmoil enough to be clear enough to let concern for others enter into the picture. The monks did that by following the strict.
Well, I think it's assumed that if you're living this discipline of the Vinaya, and remember that's only one part, you're living the discipline, you're practicing meditation, and you're also studying the other Dharma. You're reading the sutras, the teachings of the Buddha, all the metaphysical teachings of the Buddha, and all the different kinds of the skandhas and so forth, and all different kinds of Buddhist teachings. So you're doing all that, that you're going to naturally be a benefit to other people. I mean, how could you not be a benefit to other people? Even if you were by yourself in the woods, you would naturally benefit the world by being a dedicated person in that kind of way, a saintly person in that kind of way. So I think from the early Buddhist perspective, I mean, they don't feel that there's a need, to particularly articulate the altruistic nature of it. It's assumed that everything that you're doing is going to be beneficial in many different ways, to humans, to devas, to the environment, to the cosmos, and such. Now later on, hundreds of years later, when these schools that are getting a bit rigid and the whole thing is getting a bit formalized, and you've got large hierarchies and stuff, and there's some corruption is gotten into the process and so forth. Then you get the Mahayana, because then you need to sort of actively articulate an altruistic path. So from the Mahayana perspective, these noble arhats who are practicing merely the Vinaya and such are kind of selfish and not really kind of holding back from what they could be doing. But that's something that's going to happen much later, and it's sort of a natural progression, where the Mahayana would be kind of things get stale, so you have to have a way to revitalize it. I mean, all philosophies and all rules and all paths, and they come out of some kind of natural situation where there's a problem with what came before. And then people need to find a new creative solution. And the Mahayana was a creative solution to the staleness of monasteries that had developed. And also the fact that monasteries were excluding lay people and perhaps denigrating lay people, scamming lay people, not helping them as much as they could. And the Mahayana just opens the whole thing up so that whether you're a household or a monk, you still can become enlightened. And it's just a much more inclusive. It's no longer the elite of the saintly, but it's everybody has a chance to develop spiritually.
Thank you.
Well, we will continue. Next week.
Thank you, Bruce.
We dedicate merit. By this merit, Tata, may it defeat the enemy ongoing. From the stormy waves of birth, old age, sickness, and death, from the ocean of samsara, and free all beings.
Thank you.
Well, thank you.
Bye.
Thank you, Bruce.
Good night.
Thank you, Bruce.
Thank
Good
you.
question show.
Bye.
Night, everybody.
Good night.
Good night.
Good
Good
night.
night.